Raymond Hansen's pen slipped from his fingers the moment he saw the drawing. His 5-year-old daughter stood in the doorway beaming. "Daddy, look, I drew our family." 3 stick figures, labeled Daddy, me, Mommy. But the woman labeled Mommy had red hair and green eyes. His late wife, Claire, had been blonde, blue-eyed. "That's Mommy," Jessica said proudly. "She braids my hair every morning." Raymond's hands began to shake. The face in his daughter's drawing wasn't his wife's. It was Martha Monroe's, their nanny, the woman he'd barely looked at in 2 years. How did I lose my daughter without ever leaving my house? What Raymond was about to discover would force him to confront a devastating truth. While he'd spent 2 years building a shrine to the past, a stranger had quietly become the only mother his daughter had ever known. And the choice he'd have to make would either destroy his family or finally set them all free. Before we go back to where this all began, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to discover, how a father could lose his daughter without ever leaving his house, will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, grief, and what it really means to be a parent. Don't miss a single moment of this journey. Now back to the story. 2 years earlier, Raymond had made a promise at a funeral. Rain had hammered against the black umbrellas as they lowered Claire's casket into the ground. Jessica, barely 3 years old, had clung to his leg, too young to understand why Mommy wouldn't wake up. Raymond had knelt beside the polished mahogany, placed his palm against the cold wood, and whispered words that felt like an oath. "I'll make sure Jessica never forgets you. I promise." He'd kept that promise with religious devotion. Claire's bedroom remained exactly as she'd left it, her jewelry on the vanity, her books on the nightstand, her favorite sweater still draped over the reading chair. The nursery she'd decorated stayed frozen in time, pastel clouds painted on walls that Jessica had long outgrown. Photographs of Claire covered every surface of the mansion. Claire laughing at their wedding, Claire pregnant and glowing, Claire holding newborn Jessica with tears of joy streaming down her face. The house had become a museum, and Raymond had become its curator. His daily routine was mechanical, precise, emotionally sterile. He left for the office before Jessica woke, buried himself in contracts and acquisitions until the numbers blurred together, and returned long after she'd gone to sleep. On the rare evenings he made it home for dinner, he'd find a plate waiting for him in the dining room. Jessica already bathed, already fed, already tucked into bed by someone else. That someone was Martha Monroe. Raymond barely registered her existence. She was 40-something, he supposed, with red hair always pulled back in a practical bun and green eyes he'd never quite looked into directly. She appeared when needed and vanished when not, like a ghost who happened to do laundry and prepare meals. Their interactions were purely transactional, conducted in passing. "Miss Monroe, Jessica needs already done, Mr. Hansen." He never asked what it was, never wondered how Martha always seemed to know. She was staff. Efficient staff, that was enough. What Raymond didn't see, what he trained himself not to see, was how Martha knew everything about Jessica that he didn't. She knew Jessica had stopped liking pink 6 months ago and now insisted on purple everything. She knew Jessica was terrified of the dark, but fascinated by beetles and would spend hours watching them in the garden. She knew the exact way to cut sandwich crusts so Jessica would actually eat them, and which stuffed animal needed to be tucked in on the left side, never the right. She knew Jessica's favorite song was "You Are My Sunshine," and sang it every morning while braiding her hair. Raymond never heard any of this. He was always already gone. On the rare Saturday mornings when he worked from his home office, he'd hear sounds from the kitchen, laughter, singing, the kind of unreserved joy that seemed like it belonged to a different house entirely. Once, curious despite himself, he'd walk past and glimpse them through the doorway. Martha at the stove making star-shaped pancakes while Jessica stood on a step stool beside her, flour on her nose, giggling about something Raymond would never know. It had made him irrationally angry. Claire had never made such messes in the kitchen. Claire had been elegant, organized, perfect. He'd turned away and returned to his contracts. When Raymond did interact with Jessica directly, the obligatory Sunday breakfast, the occasional bedtime story he'd schedule like a board meeting, she was different. Polite, quiet, careful. She'd sit across from him at the dining table with perfect posture, answer his questions in complete sentences, never spill anything or speak too loudly. He'd attributed this to proper grief. His daughter was learning to carry loss with dignity, just as he was. It never occurred to him that she was performing, that she'd learned her father preferred the museum version of childhood, clean, quiet, controlled, and so that is what she gave him. The real Jessica, the one who sang off-key and built elaborate stories about her stuffed animals and asked 10,000 questions about why clouds moved, only existed when Martha was there. Now, staring at the drawing in his hands, Raymond saw every detail he'd been blind to for 2 years. The red hair, captured in bright crayon strokes, the green eyes, 2 careful circles colored in with concentration. Even the small beauty mark on the left cheek that he'd never noticed because he'd never actually looked at Martha's face. His daughter had drawn her family, and Raymond wasn't sure he recognized any of them, least of all himself. How dare she? The thought burned through Raymond's mind as he stared at the drawing, Jessica's innocent face still beaming up at him. How dare she let this happen? How dare Martha Monroe, the help, a woman he paid to follow instructions, allow his daughter to replace Claire's memory with her own face? It's beautiful, sweetheart, he managed, his voice tight. Why don't you go wash up for dinner? Jessica skipped away, oblivious to the fury building behind her father's carefully controlled expression. Raymond made a decision that night. He cleared his schedule for the following week, told his assistant he'd be working from home. If something was happening under his roof, if this woman was somehow manipulating his daughter, erasing Claire's memory, and inserting herself where she didn't belong, he would find the evidence. He would watch. He would see, and then he would act. The first morning, Raymond positioned himself in the upstairs hallway before dawn, door cracked just enough to observe the kitchen below. At 6:15, Martha appeared, moving quietly through the space as if she'd done it 1,000 times, which Raymond realized with uncomfortable awareness she had. At 6:30, Jessica padded downstairs in her pajamas, stuffed rabbit dragging behind her. Good morning, sunshine. Martha's voice was warm, genuinely delighted, as if seeing Jessica was the best part of her day. Jessica's whole face lit up. Good morning, Mommy. Raymond's hands clenched into fists. But Martha's smile faltered. She knelt down, gently tucking a strand of hair behind Jessica's ear. Sweet girl, you know I'm Martha. But you're my Martha, Jessica insisted, wrapping her small arms around the woman's neck. My mommy Martha. For a long moment, Martha simply held her, and Raymond saw something flash across her face. Pain, longing, love, guilt, all tangled together in an expression he couldn't quite parse. If that makes you happy, love, Martha finally whispered. Raymond retreated to his office, nauseous. Over the next several days, he watched, and what he saw made everything worse because it didn't fit the narrative he needed it to fit. He watched Martha prepare breakfast every morning, not just any breakfast, but star-shaped pancakes cut with a cookie cutter, arranged on the plate to look like a constellation. Jessica would name each star, and Martha would listen as if she were learning the secrets of the universe. He watched the morning routine. Martha laying out clothes she somehow knew Jessica would love, braiding her hair with practiced efficiency while singing that damn Sunshine song, checking her backpack twice to make sure the homework folder was there. He followed them to school drop-off one morning, hanging back in his car like some kind of stalker. Martha knew every teacher's name, Mrs. Peterson asked about her mother's health. Mr. Carlyle thanked her for the book recommendation. The principal stopped to chat about Jessica's progress in reading. And Jessica, his reserved, careful daughter, clung to Martha at the classroom door like she was being separated from oxygen itself. "I'll be right here at 3 o'clock, Martha promised, kissing the top of her head. Same as always. Raymond watched his daughter's face transform from panic to peace with those simple words. Words he'd never thought to say. Promises he'd never thought to make. He watched Martha help with homework that evening, turning math problems into a game about her stuffed animals, making Jessica laugh while she learned. When Jessica scraped her knee in the garden, Martha appeared with the antiseptic and bandages within seconds, cleaned the wound with gentle efficiency, and kissed the bandage like it held healing powers. "There," she said softly. "All better. You're so brave, sweet girl." Jessica had beamed like she'd been given a medal. One afternoon, Raymond checked the kitchen after Martha and Jessica had finished lunch. On the counter sat Martha's plate, an apple core and a small pile of sandwich crusts. The crust Jessica always left behind. The crust Raymond had never noticed, because he'd never paid attention to what his daughter actually ate. That evening, he did something he knew was a violation but couldn't stop himself. He opened Martha's bedroom door. The room was sparse to the point of emptiness. A single bed, neatly made, a small dresser, a lamp. But the walls were covered in Jessica's artwork. Crayon drawings, watercolor paintings, construction paper crafts. Every stick figure family. Every purple flower. Every attempt at spelling her name. On the nightstand sat a single photograph. Martha and Jessica at the park, both laughing, ice cream on their faces. Raymond had hundreds of professional photographs of Jessica throughout the house, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd seen his daughter laugh like that. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been the one to make her laugh at all. He backed out of the room, something uncomfortable twisting in his chest. "She's stealing my daughter," he told himself. "She's replacing Claire." But another voice, quieter and more honest, whispered back, "She's giving everything she has. And what are you giving?" Raymond silenced that voice. He had to, because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging something far more painful than betrayal. It would mean acknowledging his own failure. That night, Raymond did what he did every Saturday evening. He visited Claire's room. He turned it into a shrine without consciously deciding to. Her jewelry still sat in the crystal dish on the vanity. Her books remained stacked on the nightstand, bookmark holding her place in a novel she'd never finish. Her favorite cardigan, soft cream cashmere, still draped over the reading chair. The room existed in perfect suspension, a museum exhibit titled "The Life of Claire Hansen, Frozen at Age 32. Raymond sat on her side of the bed and let the silence wrap around him. This was the only place he allowed himself to remember. The only place where grief was permitted. His hand brushed against something wedged between the mattress and nightstand, a leather journal, Claire's journal. He'd never read it. It had felt like a violation when she was alive, too painful after she died. Tonight, desperate for answers he couldn't articulate, Raymond opened it. The pages fell open to an entry from 3 years earlier. Raymond has this beautiful rigidity. He thinks love is preservation, keeping things perfect, controlled, protected. But love isn't preservation. Love is wild. It's messy and uncontrollable and constantly changing. If anything happens to me, please don't let him turn our home into a museum. Let Jessica make messes. Let her live. Raymond's hands trembled. The medication, he thought. She was anxious. She didn't mean. He flipped forward. Interviewed a nanny today, Martha Monroe. Something sad in her eyes, but God's, the way she held Jessica, like she was made of light. I think she's the one. Raymond's breath caught. Claire had chosen Martha. One more entry, the last one written the week before her surgery. If I don't survive this, please don't let your grief consume Jessica's childhood. Let her call someone else mommy if she needs to. My title isn't what matters, her heart is. I'll always be her mother. But if she needs a living hand to hold, a living voice to sing to her, let her have it. That's not betrayal. That's life. The journal slipped from Raymond's hands. She didn't know what she was saying, he whispered. The medication. She was scared. Downstairs, an explosion of laughter cut through his denial. Raymond walked to the hallway, looked over the banister. Through the kitchen doorway, he could see Martha and Jessica baking cookies. Flour covered everything, the counter, the floor, both of them. Jessica had it in her hair, on her nose. Handprints all over her purple shirt. It was chaos, a mess Claire would never have allowed. And Jessica was radiant. She was dancing, singing off key, while Martha laughed and tried to show her how to use the cookie cutter. When the dough stuck, Jessica giggled so hard she snorted, which made Martha laugh even harder. The sound echoed through the house like music, like life. Raymond gripped the banister. Claire would have been horrified by this kitchen, by the waste, the mess, the lack of control. But Claire wasn't here, and the woman who was here had given Jessica something Raymond saw now with devastating clarity: permission to be a child, to be messy and loud and free, to live. Everything Claire had begged him to do in that journal, everything he'd refused to see. The anger he had been nursing crystallized into something harder. This had to stop. Not because Martha was doing something wrong, but because she was doing everything right, and it made his own absence unbearable to witness. He couldn't be wrong. He couldn't have spent 2 years building a shrine while his daughter disappeared behind its walls. So Martha had to be the problem. Raymond descended the stairs, his decision made. This has to stop. Monday morning, Raymond called Martha to his office. She appeared in the doorway exactly 3 minutes after he'd sent the text. Prompt, professional, her expression carefully neutral. She stood with her hands folded, waiting, like she'd done this 100 times before, which Raymond realized she probably had. He didn't invite her to sit. "Miss Monroe, we need to discuss boundaries." His voice was cold, executive, the tone he used with employees who disappointed him. "I've observed some concerning patterns over the past week." Something flickered across Martha's face. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. But she simply nodded. "Of course, Mr. Hansen. Jessica has become overly attached to you. She's begun using inappropriate terms of address. This needs to stop immediately." Martha's fingers tightened where they were clasped, but her voice remained steady. "I understand. Effective immediately, there will be new rules." Raymond pulled out a typed list he'd prepared at 3 in the morning, unable to sleep. "No more bedtime stories, I'll handle that. No more cooking together. The chef will prepare all meals. No terms of endearment. You will address Jessica by her name only, and she will call you Miss Monroe, nothing else." He watched Martha's face pale, watched her swallow hard, but she didn't protest. "You are her nanny, not her mother. I need you to remember that." The words hung in the air like a verdict. "Of course, Mr. Hansen." Martha's voice was barely above a whisper. "I apologize if I overstepped. Jessica needs to remember her real mother," Raymond continued, the anger he had been containing finally leaking through. "Not some replacement who—" "With respect, sir." Martha's interruption was so quiet he almost missed it. Jessica was 10 months old when Mrs. Hansen passed. She has no memories of her mother. No memories at all. The truth of it hit like a slap. Raymond's jaw clenched. "That's enough. Follow the new rules, Miss Monroe, or find other employment." Martha nodded once, her eyes suspiciously bright, and left without another word. The change was immediate and devastating. Martha became a ghost again, efficient, silent, invisible. She prepared meals without singing. She laid out Jessica's clothes without commentary. She braided hair in complete silence, her face carefully blank. Jessica noticed immediately. "Why won't Martha sing anymore?" she asked Raymond that first evening, her small voice confused. "Because I'm here now, sweetheart." Raymond forced a smile. "Daddy's going to spend more time with you. Isn't that better?" Jessica nodded, but the light had gone out of her eyes. "Yes, Daddy." She tried to be happy. Raymond could see the effort it cost her. The careful way she sat at dinner, the polite answers to his questions, the forced smile when he announced he'd be reading her bedtime story. She was performing, just like she always had with him. That night, Raymond selected a book from Jessica's shelf, a chapter book about a girl detective that looked appropriately educational. He settled into the chair beside her bed, opened to the first page, and began to read. Within minutes, he realized his mistake. The vocabulary was too advanced, the plot too complex for a 5-year-old. Jessica's eyes glazed over, her attention drifting to the ceiling. "Can you do the voices?" she asked softly. "Like Mommy Martha does?" Raymond's hands tightened on the book. "Martha isn't your mommy." "I know," Jessica whispered. "I'm sorry." He continued reading, but the words blurred together. His own exhaustion from the sleepless night caught up with him. His voice grew slower, heavier. The book dipped in his hands. By page 3, Raymond was asleep in the chair, mouth slightly open, the book sliding toward the floor. Jessica lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, with wide, wet eyes. She didn't call out for him to wake up, didn't ask for water or another story or any of the usual bedtime delays children invented. She simply lay there in the dark, as quiet and still as the museum her house had become, and let the silent tears slide down her temples into her hair. Down the hall in her sparse room, Martha sat on the edge of her bed with her face in her hands, trying not to make a sound as she cried. And in Claire's preserved bedroom, the journal lay open on the nightstand where Raymond had left it, the last entry visible in the moonlight. "Let her have it. That's not betrayal. That's life." But Raymond wasn't there to read it. He was asleep in his daughter's room, dreaming of a wife who'd begged him to do the exact opposite of everything he was doing. And Jessica was awake, learning what her father had already mastered, how to grieve someone who was still alive. 3 weeks later, Jessica stopped drawing. Raymond noticed because her preschool teacher called him, the first time anyone from the school had ever contacted him directly. Martha always handled those calls. "Mr. Hanson, we're concerned about Jessica," Mrs. Peterson said, her voice gentle but firm. "She used to be one of our most creative students, but she hasn't picked up a crayon in weeks. She doesn't sing during music time anymore. She barely speaks unless directly asked a question. We think she might benefit from talking to someone." Raymond wanted to dismiss it. Children went through phases. Jessica was fine. She was adjusting. But that night, he watched her at dinner. Really watched her. She'd gotten smaller somehow. Not physically, but in the way she occupied space, like she was trying to disappear into her chair. She ate 3 bites of chicken, pushed the rest around her plate, and asked to be excused in a voice barely above a whisper. "Don't you want dessert?" Raymond asked. "No, thank you, Daddy." Polite, mechanical, empty. He looked at Martha standing silently by the kitchen door and saw her eyes were wet. They were always wet now. Raymond hired Dr. Amelia Ross the next day. The child psychologist's office was decorated to be inviting. Soft colors, toys in bins, drawings on the walls. Raymond sat behind a one-way mirror while Dr. Ross settled onto the floor across from Jessica. "Hi, Jessica. I'm Dr. Ross, but you can call me Emily if you want. I talk to kids about their feelings. Is that okay?" Jessica nodded, her hands folded in her lap. "Can you draw me a picture of your family?" Dr. Ross slid paper and crayons across the floor. Jessica stared at them for a long moment, then picked up a black crayon. She drew 3 stick figures. But unlike the drawing that had started all of this, these figures were far apart, separated by vast white space. One figure stood behind a rectangle labeled desk. One tiny figure stood in the middle, alone. One figure with red hair stood outside a box labeled house. "That's beautiful," Dr. Ross said gently. "Can you tell me about it?" Jessica pointed to the figure at the desk. "That's Daddy. He works." "And this one?" DeRoss pointed to the tiny middle figure. "That's me." "And who's this outside the house?" Jessica's finger trembled slightly. "That's Martha." "Is Martha your nanny?" "She used to be Mommy Martha," Jessica whispered, "but Daddy says she's not Mommy anymore." Dr. Ross's expression didn't change. But Raymond saw her hand tighten on her clipboard. "How does that make you feel?" Jessica looked down at the picture. When she spoke, her voice was so small, Raymond had to lean closer to the speaker to hear it. "Empty." The session lasted another 20 minutes, but Raymond barely heard any of it. That single word echoed in his head like an accusation. Empty. Afterward, Dr. Ross met with him in her office. She didn't smile. "Mr. Hanson, your daughter isn't grieving her mother. She never knew her mother. She was too young. Jessica is grieving her present. The one person who saw her, who loved her actively and daily, is being forcibly removed while still physically present. It's a uniquely cruel form of loss." Raymond's hands clenched. "I'm her father. I'm here now. I'm trying." "You're physically present," Dr. Ross interrupted, her voice kind but uncompromising. "But emotionally, Jessica doesn't feel seen by you. She feels like a disappointment, like she's supposed to be someone she's not. Someone who remembers a mother she never knew. And the person who loved her exactly as she is has been turned into a stranger." "I'm protecting her," Raymond said, but his voice wavered. "From what? From love? From connection? From the only stable maternal figure she's ever had?" Dr. Ross leaned forward. "Mr. Hanson, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with yourself. Do you want to be right, or do you want your daughter to be whole?" Raymond opened his mouth, but no words came. "Because right now," Dr. Ross continued quietly, "you can't have both." Raymond woke to screaming at 2 in the morning. He was running down the hallway before consciousness fully caught up, heart hammering. Jessica's door was open, light spilling into the corridor. She sat up in bed, sobbing, her small body shaking with terror. "I'm here, baby. Daddy's here." Raymond dropped beside her, reaching for her. Jessica pushed him away, hard. "No, I want Mommy. I want my Mommy." "Jessica, please, I'm right here." "I want Martha. I want my Mommy." Movement in the doorway. Martha stood there in her nightgown, hesitating like she needed permission to enter. Raymond looked at his daughter, at the way she reached past him toward Martha with desperate need, and something inside him broke. "I'm her father," he whispered. "I should be enough." But Jessica was already scrambling toward the bed's edge. "Mommy, Martha, please." Raymond stepped aside, defeated. Martha gathered Jessica into her arms, and the change was immediate. Jessica melted into her, but just quieting to hiccups, small fists clutching Martha's nightgown like a lifeline. Martha rocked her gently, humming that sunshine song, and Raymond watched his daughter find comfort he couldn't provide. The contrast was devastating. After several minutes, Jessica's breathing slowed. She remained curled against Martha's chest, but her voice emerged small and sleepy. "Daddy, why are you sad all the time? Why don't you see me?" The question was a physical blow. "You see Mommy from the pictures, but you don't see me. Martha sees me. Martha knows my favorite color changed to purple. Martha knows I'm scared of the dark but brave about bugs. Martha knows how I like my sandwiches cut." Each detail was an indictment. Each small thing he'd never noticed was evidence of his absence. Then Jessica delivered the killing blow. Daddy, I tried really hard to remember first mommy's voice. I look at her pictures every night like you said, but I don't remember. I don't remember her face without the pictures or what she sounded like. Tears slipped down her cheeks. But I remember Martha's heartbeat. I remember Martha's songs. I remember how she smells like cinnamon. Jessica looked up at him with eyes too old for 5 years. Does that make me bad? Raymond's vision blurred. No, baby, no. Then why can't I love her? Martha's voice barely a whisper. Sweet girl, you can love anyone you want. Jessica's eyes drifted close, exhaustion claiming her. Within minutes, she was asleep. Martha stood carefully and carried Jessica to bed. She tucked the blanket around her with practiced tenderness, smoothed her hair, and placed the stuffed rabbit in the crook of her arm, left side, not right. Then she left without a word. Raymond sank to the floor beside Jessica's bed and let himself really look at the room for the first time in months. The drawings covered one wall, Jessica's artwork from preschool, pieces Martha had been saving and displaying. His eyes tracked across them chronologically, and his heart stopped. The earliest drawings showed a family, Daddy, Jessica, and Mommy with yellow hair and blue eyes, copied from photographs. But month by month, Mommy changed. The yellow hair became lighter, less distinct. The blue eyes faded. By month 6, the mother figure was a generic outline. By month 12, the hair had hints of orange. By month 24, Mommy had red hair, green eyes, and a beauty mark. Raymond watched his daughter forget Claire in real time, drawing by drawing, and realized he hadn't been there to stop it. Hadn't been there to keep Claire's memory alive. He'd been so busy building a shrine to the past that he'd completely missed his daughter's present. And the woman he'd blamed had been the only one actually there. Loving Jessica, seeing Jessica, choosing Jessica every single day. Raymond pressed his palms against his eyes and finally let himself break. I know this hurts, but that's because you have a heart that still believes love is supposed to be messy and real and present. If you're feeling this, you're exactly who this channel is for. Hit subscribe and become part of a family that isn't afraid to sit with hard truths. And if you've ever loved someone who couldn't see you, leave a comment. Your story matters here. Raymond drove to the cemetery at midnight. He didn't remember making the decision, didn't remember grabbing his keys or getting in the car. He just found himself standing in front of Claire's headstone, the marble gleaming pale in the moonlight, and finally let the truth come pouring out. I'm sorry. His voice cracked in the silence. I thought I was honoring you. I thought keeping everything frozen was love. I thought if I preserved every room, every photograph, every memory exactly as it was, then you'd never really be gone. The wind moved through the trees, but Claire didn't answer. She never would again. But Jessica doesn't remember you. The words tasted like failure. She was 10 months old when you died. She doesn't remember your voice or your face or the way you smelled. And I've been so angry at her for that. Angry at a baby for being a baby. Angry at her for moving forward when I couldn't. Raymond sank to his knees on the grass, not caring about the dew soaking through his pants. I've been mourning you so hard, I didn't see I was losing her. There's a woman in our house who loves our daughter, who sees her, who knows every tiny thing about her that I've been too grief-stricken to notice. And I've hated her for it, because it meant you were really gone, because it meant life kept going without you. His hands pressed against the cold marble. I made you a shrine, Claire, but I think I made Jessica live in a tomb. The headstone beside Claire's caught his eye. He'd never noticed it before. An older grave, weathered and simple. The inscription read, "Beloved Mother, your love lives in those you touched." Raymond stared at those words until they blurred. Your love lives in those you touched, not in preserved bedrooms, not in untouched closets, not in photographs gathering dust, in people, in hearts, in the way love gets passed forward. What if Martha isn't your replacement? Raymond whispered. What if she's your legacy? What if you chose her because you knew? You knew I'd do exactly this. You knew I'd freeze. And you gave Jessica someone who wouldn't. He read Claire's journal entry again in his mind. Let her call someone else mommy if she needs to. My title isn't what matters. Her heart is. Claire had given him permission 2 years ago. She'd begged him not to do exactly what he'd done, and he'd been too lost in his own grief to hear her. Raymond drove home in the pre-dawn darkness, something heavy and painful shifting in his chest. Not healing, not yet, but breaking open, which was a start. The house was dark except for a light in the kitchen. Martha sat at the table, a cardboard box beside her, methodically folding her few possessions. Her eyes were red, her face drawn. She didn't look up when he entered. You're leaving? Raymond's voice was hoarse. I've caused enough pain, Mr. Hanson. Martha's hands didn't stop moving, carefully wrapping a mug in newspaper. Jessica will adjust. Children are resilient. She shouldn't have to adjust to losing someone she loves. Martha's hands finally stilled. She looked up at him, and Raymond saw exhaustion and heartbreak written across every line of her face. With respect, sir, she already has. 3 weeks ago, when you made your rules. Martha's voice was quiet but steady. I've watched her disappear a little more each day. I won't stay and watch her fade completely. It's too much like... She stopped, pressing her lips together. Too much like what? Raymond asked gently. Too much like losing my daughter all over again, Martha whispered. The confession hung in the air between them. Raymond pulled out a chair and sat across from her. For the first time in 2 years, he really looked at Martha Monroe, not as staff, not as a threat, but as a human being who'd been carrying her own grief while holding his daughter together. She's not the one who needs to adjust, Raymond said. I am. Martha's eyes filled with tears. I've been wrong about everything, and I don't know how to fix it, but I know I can't do it without you. They sat at the kitchen table as dawn broke outside, and for the first time in 2 years, Raymond and Martha had an actual conversation. Tell me about your daughter, Raymond said quietly. Martha's hands trembled around her cooling tea. I lost her 7 years ago, stillbirth at 37 weeks. They said it was a cord accident. One of those things that just happens. Her voice was barely audible. The doctors told me I'd likely never carry another pregnancy to term, that she was my only chance. Raymond felt something crack open in his chest. I'm so sorry. I spent 3 years working in pediatric hospice after that, loving children I knew I'd lose. It was all I could handle, caring for kids who weren't mine, who I'd have to say goodbye to. Martha wiped her eyes. Then I saw your wife's job posting. And when Claire handed me Jessica that first day, when Jessica grabbed my finger and smiled, she broke down completely. I felt my heart restart. I felt like maybe I could breathe again. Martha, I never meant to replace your wife, Mr. Hanson. I swear I didn't. But I couldn't watch Jessica disappear the way I disappeared after losing my daughter. I couldn't watch her fade into silence and loneliness. So every time she called me mommy, I corrected her. But she kept trying, and eventually I let her. Because she needed someone. Don't apologize for loving my daughter when I was too broken to do it myself. Martha looked up, tears streaming down her face. Raymond stood. Come with me. He led her upstairs to Claire's room. Martha hesitated at the threshold. She'd never been inside. It's okay, Raymond said, opening the door. The room was exactly as he'd left it, a museum, a tomb. Raymond picked up Claire's journal from the nightstand and opened to a marked page. My wife wrote this about you. He read aloud. Martha has this beautiful, quiet strength. She loves without needing credit or recognition. If anything happens to me, I hope Raymond sees what I see. That love doesn't diminish by being shared. It multiplies. Martha's hand covered her mouth. Raymond turned to another entry. I want Jessica to know what maternal love feels like, even if I'm not there to give it. Martha will help Jessica live. That's not betrayal. That's the greatest gift I could ask for. She gave me permission? Martha whispered. She gave us both permission. I was just too stubborn and grief-stricken to see it. Raymond walked to the closet and pulled out Claire's favorite cardigan, the soft cream cashmere that still smelled faintly of her perfume. He held it out to Martha. I can't, Martha said, backing away. That's hers. It was hers. Now I'm giving it to you, not to replace her, to continue her, the way you already have. Martha took the cardigan with shaking hands, held it against her chest like something sacred. A small voice from the doorway made them both turn. Mommy! Martha? Daddy? Jessica stood there in her pajamas, eyes wide and frightened. Am I in trouble? Why are you in First Mommy's room? Raymond knelt down. You're not in trouble, sweetheart. Come here. Jessica approached cautiously. Raymond took her hand. Jessica, if you want to call Martha Mommy, you can. I won't stop you anymore. I was wrong to try. Jessica's lip trembled. But what about First Mommy? Won't she be sad? Martha knelt too, now wearing the cardigan. First Mommy is your mommy in heaven. She'll always be your mommy. I'm your mommy who's here. Both are real. Both love you more than anything. Love doesn't run out, sweet girl. Both? Jessica's voice was so small, so hopeful. Both, Raymond confirmed, his own voice breaking. Jessica looked between them, then threw her arms around both their necks, pulling them together in a fierce hug. And for the first time in 2 years, Raymond felt his family begin to breathe again. Jessica's 6th birthday fell on a Saturday in spring. For the first time in 2 years, Raymond didn't plan an elaborate party with catered food and entertainment Jessica never wanted. Instead, they had a simple backyard picnic. Jessica's actual friends from preschool, homemade sandwiches, and a sprinkler running in the sunshine. Martha stood at the back door, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she belonged at the celebration. Raymond crossed the yard and took her hand. Your family, he said simply, and led her into the chaos of laughing children and melting popsicles. Jessica's face when she saw Martha join the party was pure radiance. After cake, Raymond brought out his gift, a certificate for a professional family portrait session. The photographer arrived an hour later, set up her equipment in the garden, and surveyed the scene with professional efficiency. All right, let's start with Dad and the birthday girl. Wait! Jessica grabbed Martha's hand with fierce determination. We need Mommy. The photographer glanced at Raymond, uncertain. He nodded. Jessica took charge, positioning them exactly how she wanted. Mommy Martha in the middle, so she can hold both of us. Martha sat in the garden chair, and Jessica climbed into her lap like she'd done it 1,000 times. Because she had. Raymond stood beside them, his hand resting on Martha's shoulder. Not romantic, familial, real. The photographer smiled. Perfect. Everyone say family. They didn't say anything. They just looked at each other. This imperfect, pieced-together family that had almost destroyed itself before learning how to breathe. And the camera captured something more honest than any posed smile could have been. Later, as dusk settled and the last guest left, Jessica blew out her candles. What did you wish for? Martha asked, tucking a strand of hair behind Jessica's ear. Can't tell or it won't come true, Jessica said seriously. Then she leaned close to Raymond and whispered, I wished we could be like this forever. Raymond's throat tightened. That's my wish too, sweetheart. 2 weeks later, Raymond hung 2 portraits in Jessica's room side by side. On the left, Claire holding baby Jessica in the hospital, both of them glowing, the professional photograph Raymond had treasured for years. Beautiful, formal, frozen in time. On the right, Martha, Jessica, and Raymond in the garden, slightly windblown, caught mid-laugh, messily and wonderfully alive. Jessica studied them both, then carefully wrote labels on index cards and taped them beneath each frame. "My mommies," the cards read. 6 months later, the house had transformed. Claire's bedroom was no longer a shrine. Raymond had finally packed away her things, kept what mattered, donated the rest. Jessica's room was age-appropriate now, covered in her current artwork and interests. The kitchen was frequently messy with baking projects and homework and life. One Saturday morning, Jessica came running into the kitchen where Martha was making pancakes, and Raymond was attempting to help without getting in the way. "Mommy, Daddy, look what I drew." Both adults looked up automatically. Neither questioned which one she meant anymore. Jessica held up her latest masterpiece. 4 stick figures this time. Daddy, herself, Mommy Martha, and one more figure with yellow hair and angel wings floating above them all, labeled Mommy in Heaven. "That's first Mommy," Jessica explained, pointing to the angel. "She's watching over us, and that's our family now." Martha's eyes filled with tears, Raymond's too. The kitchen was a mess. There was flour on the counter and syrup spilled on the table and dishes in the sink. The house would never be the museum it had been, but it was full of laughter and imperfect love and the messy, beautiful chaos of actual life. And somewhere, Raymond thought, Claire was smiling. Because her daughter was whole. Her love had multiplied instead of died. And the family she'd left behind had finally learned what she'd known all along, that honoring the dead means choosing life for the living. Love doesn't replace love. It multiplies. And family isn't just about blood or vows. It's about who shows up day after day to see you, hold you, and help you become. If this story reminded you that love doesn't replace love, it multiplies, then you need to subscribe right now. Because tomorrow I'm bringing you a story about a billionaire who fired his nanny, and then his son stopped eating for 5 whole days in solidarity with the nanny. It will shatter everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty. You don't want to miss it. Now, I want to hear from you. Who in your life has been your Martha? The person who saw you when everyone else looked past you. Tell me their name in the comments. Let's honor the people who showed up. And here's something I genuinely want to know. Do you think Raymond was wrong to try to preserve his wife's memory, or was he just grieving the only way he knew how? Drop your honest take below. I want to hear both sides. Subscribe, comment, and I'll see you again tomorrow.